Riley Garrett stood in absolute darkness, blood cooling on her hands, holding a folder stamped in faded red ink with words that would not stay still in her vision. Eyes only. Ghost directive. The paper trembled, not from her hands, from the weight of what was written inside. Somewhere below her boots, a man was bleeding out on Texas limestone, and the wind carried the copper smell of it up through the canyon and into her lungs and made her remember things she wished Ghost had never taught her to see. The radio crackled, static and breath, and then a voice that had been calm for 40 years and was not calm now. "Did you read it?" She looked at the folder again, at the handwriting she knew better than her own, at the date, March 2012, 2 weeks before Ghost died, 2 weeks before the world told her it was an accident and she knew better and spent the next 11 years preparing for this exact moment. And now the moment was here and everything she believed was constructed from lies that had been carefully arranged to look like truth. "I read it." Her voice came out flat, dead. "Everything I believed was a lie." The man on the radio said nothing. She could hear him breathing, could hear him making the same calculations she was making, weighing what came next against what had already been done and finding the scales impossible to balance. She looked at her rifle, at the scope still warm from the last shot, at the canyon below where headlights were beginning to converge because someone had heard the gunfire and someone always heard the gunfire, and the question was always the same. How much time before they arrived? How much time before the choice became permanent? "He trained me for this?" The question hung in the dark air between her and the radio and the bleeding man in the 11 years she had spent becoming exactly what Ghost needed her to become. The question had no good answer, only true ones. The radio stayed silent. She closed the folder, put it inside her vest next to her heart where Ghost had taught her to keep the things that mattered more than breathing. The wind shifted and brought the smell of creosote and dust and old blood that had soaked into stone centuries before anyone called this land Texas. She turned her back on the canyon and walked into the darkness and did not look back because Ghost had taught her that too. How to leave a thing behind and carry it with you at the same time. 96 hours earlier, everything had been simpler. The locker room at Naval Special Warfare Command Dam, Neck, Virginia, had been repainted sometime in the last 6 months. Someone in logistics had finally acknowledged that women existed in this building and needed a space that was not a storage closet with the padlock. The paint still smelled new. The lockers still had price tags on the hinges. It was the kind of afterthought that communicated everything without saying a word. Riley stood at the center locker with her back to the door. White sports bra, camouflage pants half zipped. She had been here for 3 weeks, and the post-it note on her locker still read, "Fake seal parking only" in black marker that someone thought was funny. She left it there. Underestimation was the sharpest weapon she would ever carry. Ghost had taught her that when she was 15 and still believed the world rewarded fairness. The door opened at 0520 hours. She did not turn around. She had heard the footsteps in the hallway. Heavy boots, command cadence, the gait of a man who had been walking into rooms for so long, he had stopped considering what might be on the other side. She counted his steps, 12 from the hallway, then silence. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. "You going to stand there all morning, Commander?" Her voice came out the way it always did, even, unhurried, the voice of someone who had been in worse situations than a man with a folder and too many assumptions. Behind her, she heard the precise moment his brain caught up with his eyes. It was not the sound of embarrassment. It was the sound of recognition. She turned slowly, adjusted her sports bra with deliberate calm, looked at him directly. Commander Daniel Rourke was 62 years old with 38 years in the teams, and a face that had processed more violence than most men ever witnessed. That face had gone the color of old concrete. His eyes were not on her. They were on what was behind her, on the ink that marked her skin in a pattern that only 12 people in the history of naval special warfare had ever been authorized to carry. The trident, 3 points rising, 12 stars in a circle around it, each star hollow, each star representing a name that was no longer spoken in polite company. "Where did you get it?" Not a question, a demand wearing the uniform of one. "From the only person authorized to give it to me, sir." Rourke stepped into the room. One step, like he needed to confirm his own eyes, had not failed him. His hand moved to his pocket, pulled out a folding knife, old, worn, the handle smooth from decades of use. He opened it, turned it. The blade caught the fluorescent light and threw it back, and there on the steel was the same mark, the same trident, the same 12 stars. Frank Garrett died in 1987. That mark died with him. His voice had gone rough, scraped, the voice of a man being confronted with a ghost and finding the ghost had better documentation than he did. Riley finished zipping her pants, met his eyes without blinking. Frank Garrett died in 2012. Montana. Bicycle accident off a mountain trail. Officially. She paused. I was there when they found the body. I was 15. The folder in Rourke's hands hit the floor. Papers scattered across the linoleum in every direction, and he made no move to collect them. He grabbed the edge of the nearest bench with both hands, and Riley watched a man who had been shot and stabbed and blown up across 3 continents hold onto a locker room bench like it was the only solid thing in the world. He faked his death. Rourke said it to himself more than to her. In '87, then again in 2012. Riley pulled her shirt over her head, adjusted the collar, looked at the man who had been Ghost's best student, and saw the exact moment he started doing the math, adding the years, subtracting the lies, coming up with an answer that made his hands shake. Why? She reached into her locker, pulled out a composition notebook. Old, water-stained. The pages filled with handwriting that was small and precise and clearly not hers. She placed it on the bench between them. Because someone in the command structure sold our position to Iraqi forces in February 1991. Operation Sandstorm. Extraction of 4 chemical weapons scientists who wanted to defect. She paused. Someone leaked the coordinates. 6 operators almost died. The 4 scientists were executed to silence them. Ghost spent 25 years gathering evidence. Then someone killed him for it. Rourke sat down on the bench because his legs had made the decision before his mind did. He stared at the notebook. Did not touch it. His voice when it came was barely above a whisper. Victor did not work alone in '91. He worked with me, with Ben Torres, with Nathan Cross. We were all there. His eyes came up to meet hers. If there was a traitor, it was one of us. The door opened a second time. Master Chief Ben Torres filled the frame. 240 pounds, 49 years old, a face like hammered iron that had never once in its life arranged itself into an expression that could be described as uncertain. It arranged itself into one now. Behind him, Senior Chief Eric Kane and Petty Officer Jake Sullivan crowded into the doorway, and the locker room became very small very quickly. Torres was the oldest at 49. Kane somewhere in his late 40s. Sullivan the youngest at 44, but carrying himself with the settled certainty of a man whose faith made age irrelevant. His hand moved unconsciously to the cross around his neck. Touched it. Let go. Sir, Torres' eyes moved between Rourke and Riley. Morning briefing starts in 10. You said you wanted everyone assembled. He stopped. His gaze had snagged on something. Just a glimpse of ink where her collar had shifted. Just the top edge of the trident. Just enough. The silence that followed had physical weight. That's not possible. Sullivan's voice had dropped to something he probably used in church. His hand moved unconsciously to the cross around his neck. Touched it. Let go. Riley looked at the 4 of them. 4 operators, each somewhere between confused and shaken. All of them trained to process information faster than most people formed opinions. All of them processing very slowly right now. You all want to keep telling me what's impossible, or you want to hear what Ghost left behind? Rourke stood. Whatever had knocked him sideways, he was finding his footing again. The commander's posture coming back into his spine like a tide coming in. His voice when he spoke carried the weight of 38 years. SCIF, now. The walk took 90 seconds. 90 seconds of absolute silence. 4 men recalibrating everything they thought they understood about the woman who had spent 3 weeks sitting in the corner of their mission planning cell being called the intern. The woman someone had stuck a post-it note on the locker of that read, fake seal parking only. She had left it there because Ghost had taught her that underestimation was the sharpest weapon she would ever carry. She had been carrying it for 3 weeks. She was about to put it down. The sensitive, compartmented information facility was concrete walls and a steel table and a 400-pound magnetic locked door and a monitor on the far wall. No comfort, no decoration. Just a room designed to hold hard truths and keep soft lies out. Rourke sealed the door, turned to face them. His face had settled into something harder than concrete and twice as old. This is Riley Garrett, granddaughter of Chief Warrant Officer Frank Ghost Garrett. SEAL Team 6, Original Cadre, 1980. He paused. The official record says he died in a training accident, 1987. That record is fabricated. Ghost faked his death and spent 25 years in deep cover investigation. He died in 2012. Murdered. Torres was on his feet without remembering standing. Commander, with respect, Ghost had no documented family. His file is clear. There was no granddaughter, no children, nothing. Riley reached into her cargo pocket, placed a photograph on the steel table, slid it across. The image was sun-faded but clear. A girl maybe 10 years old standing in a Wyoming river with a fly rod twice her height. Beside her, an older man with watchful eyes and a weathered jaw holding his own rod, with the loose grip of someone who was relaxed but never fully at rest. Behind them, both barely visible in the background, was a woman, dark hair pulled back, kind eyes, watching them with the expression of someone who had learned to find peace in small moments. Ghost's wife, Riley's grandmother, Sharon, dead since 2001, but present in that photograph like a blessing neither of them knew they were receiving. Torres grabbed the photograph, stared at it, looked up. That's Ghost. Same scar along the jaw, same stance. I've seen photographs from Grenada, Panama. This is real. August 2007. Riley's voice was steady, flat. He was teaching me to read current flow for river crossings. He said good operators understand water before they earn the right to understand terrain. My grandmother Sharon took that photograph. 3 months before she died, she paused. Ghost said it was the last time he smiled for a camera. Kane leaned forward. The intelligence officer. 22 years of classified access in a mind that processed hard information long enough that it stopped feeling personal. If Ghost really survived, if he was really murdered, why come forward now? Why expose yourself after all this time? Riley's expression shifted. Not harder, more settled. The way a face looks when it is done carrying something alone and is finally setting it down in front of other people. Because Ghost believes someone in the command structure betrayed us in 1991. Because he spent 25 years gathering evidence. Because he got close enough that they killed him. And because before he died, he left me this. She placed the journal on the table, opened it to a page marked with a torn piece of envelope. The handwriting was Ghost's, small, precise, economical. The date read March 2012, 2 weeks before his death. Rourke read aloud, "If you are reading this, I am dead. The pattern has become clear. Someone sold our position in Operation Sandstorm. Someone killed 4 scientists to prevent them from testifying about U.S.-supplied chemical precursors to Iraq during the Iran-Iraq War. Someone has been eliminating everyone who might remember. I have narrowed the suspects to 6 names. 3 of them are in this room." He stopped, looked up, looked at Torres, at Kane, at Sullivan, one of us. Sullivan's hand went to his cross again. His voice shook. "Who are the 6? Riley pulled a folded paper from the journal, opened it, read the names. Daniel Rourke, Ben Torres, Eric Kane, Nathan Cross, Sarah Brennan, Marcus Hale. She looked at each man in turn, measured them, let the weight of it settle. Ghost crossed Hale off the list in 2012. He wrote confirmed clean. That leaves 5. 2 of you are in this room. 1 might be the traitor, or all 3 of you are targets like me. The monitor on the wall flickered to life without warning. A woman appeared on screen, 50-something, dark hair going silver at the temples. Eyes that had processed classified information for so long they had stopped looking at anything with casual regard. Her voice when she spoke had the compressed efficiency of someone for whom time was a resource like ammunition. "Gentlemen, Miss Garrett, I am Agent Sarah Brennan, Central Intelligence Agency. I have been listening to this conversation from Langley. Let me tell you why you are really here." The 4 men turned to the screen. Riley did not move. She had been expecting this. Ghost Journal had mentioned Brennan, had listed her as a suspect, but it had also noted that Brennan had reached out in 2011, had offered resources, had seemed genuinely interested in finding the truth. Ghost had not trusted her, but he had not eliminated her either. Operation Sandstorm was not what you were told. Brennan's voice carried no emotion, no performance, just information delivered with the precision of a scalpel. The 4 Iraqi scientists you extracted were chemical weapons experts, but they were not defecting because of conscience. They were defecting because they had evidence that the United States provided chemical precursors to Iraq during the 1980s. Iran-Iraq War era. Evidence that would have destroyed the credibility of the Reagan administration. Evidence that would have prevented the Gulf War. She paused. Let that land. Someone in our command structure decided that evidence could not be allowed to exist. The scientists were executed in Germany, made to look like a car accident. Ghost investigated, got too close, had to disappear. He faked his death in '87 and went underground. For 25 years, he gathered proof, names, financial transfers, operational orders, everything needed to dismantle the network. Then in 2012, he died. We classified it as accidental. It was not. Torres found his voice. Why are you telling us this now? Because 6 weeks ago, we intercepted communication that the person who killed Ghost is attempting to purchase the archive he compiled. Everything he gathered. 25 years of evidence. It is being auctioned to the highest bidder. Location unknown. Buyer unknown. But we believe the buyer is the person who ordered Ghost's death. The person who betrayed Sandstorm. The person who has spent 34 years covering their tracks. Brennan's face did not change, but her voice sharpened by exactly 1 degree. You are going to help me catch them, but first you need to prove Riley Garrett is who she claims to be. That she was trained by Ghost. That she can do what he could do. Because if she cannot, this entire operation is a waste of time, and we move to alternative methods. Rourke stood. His voice had found its command register again. What alternative methods? Brennan smiled. It was not warm. We bury the archive. Let the past stay buried, except that some truths are too dangerous to expose. She looked directly at Riley through the camera. Ghost died believing truth mattered more than consequences. I need to know if his granddaughter believes the same thing. The screen went dark. Riley looked at the 4 men, at Rourke, who had been Ghost's best student, at Torres, who had served with him in Mogadishu, at Kane, who processed intelligence with the efficiency of a machine, at Sullivan, whose faith in institutions was written on his face like a scar that would not heal. One of them might be the traitor, or none of them, or all of them targets. Name the tests, Riley's voice cut through the silence like a blade finding flesh. I will prove I am Ghost's heir. Then we find who killed him. Then we finish what he started. Rourke studied her for a long moment. Long enough that Torres looked at him. Long enough that the room went quiet except for the hum of the ventilation system. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 decades of making decisions that could not be unmade. Fort Benning. Tomorrow. 0800. Bring everything Ghost left you. We verify. Then we decide. The rifle range at Dam Neck's eastern end caught the Atlantic wind coming in hard and salt thick. But Fort Benning, Georgia was different. Inland. Hot. The kind of heat that made sweat evaporate before it could cool you. Riley had been here once before. With Ghost. Summer 2010. She had been 13. He had brought her to the archives. Had shown her where the old records were kept. Had given her a key and told her if he ever disappeared, she would need to come back. She had not understood then. She understood now. They drove in convoy. 2 vehicles. Rourke and Riley in the lead. Torres, Kane, and Sullivan following. 6 hours of highway. 6 hours of Riley watching the mirrors. Watching for the tail she knew was there but could not see. Someone had been watching since she arrived at Dam Neck. Someone had put that post-it note on her locker. Someone knew she was coming before she arrived. Halfway through the drive, Rourke spoke. First time in 3 hours. Why did Ghost choose you? Riley kept her eyes on the road. Hands at 10 and 2 the way Ghost had taught her. Because I had nothing to prove and everything to protect. That makes you dangerous in ways operators never are. Those were his words, not mine. Your parents. The car crash in 2005. Ghost never talked about it. Because it was not a crash. She said it flat. No emotion, no performance. Journal says staged as accident. Someone killed them. Ghost spent 7 years tracking who. By the time he found out I was already 13 and he had been training me for 5 years. He told me when I was 18. Told me if I wanted to walk away, I could. I did not walk away. Rourke glanced at her, at the tattoo visible at her collar, at the way she held the wheel with exactly the right tension. Not too tight, not too loose. He trained you for revenge. He trained me to finish what he started. There is a difference. They reached Fort Benning at 1400 hours. The archives building was brick, old. The kind of structure the Army built in the 1950s and forgot to demolish. Inside, it smelled like mildew and old paper and the accumulated weight of decades of documentation that no one would ever read. Riley pulled the key from her pocket. Rourke had given it to her at Dam Neck. The key Ghost had given him in 1997 with instructions to use it only if Ghost disappeared. Locker 247, third floor, section C. They found it in the back corner, behind rows of file boxes that had not been moved since the Cold War. The locker was standard issue, green, dented. The lock was older than Riley. She inserted the key, turned it. The mechanism clicked. The door swung open. Inside was a file box, sealed, Ghost handwriting on the label. Open only with witness, FG 1997. Rourke lifted it out, set it on the nearest table. Torres, Kane, and Sullivan gathered around. Riley cut the seal with her knife, opened the lid, not documents. A VHS tape, a brass casing, 338 Lapua Magnum, inscribed along the rim, verify before trust, and a list of 6 names written in Ghost's hand: Daniel Rourke, Ben Torres, Eric Kane, Nathan Cross, Sarah Brennan, Marcus Hale. The last name was crossed out, dated 2012. Ghost note beside it, confirmed clean. Rourke picked up the tape, turned it over. The label read February 1991, Op Sandstorm, night vision record. His hand shook, barely, just enough to see. We need a player. They found one in the archive office, ancient, the kind that used actual heads and required rewinding. Kane hooked it to a monitor. Riley pressed play. The footage started with static, then green, night vision, desert terrain, 12 figures moving in tactical formation, Ghost's voice on the audio track. Clear, calm, professional. Package secure, 4 civilians, exfil in 20 minutes. The team moved through a compound, extracted 4 men in civilian clothes, hurried them toward vehicles. Then the explosion, sudden, massive, the camera shook, men screaming, gunfire, chaos. We are compromised, Ghost's voice, no longer calm. Someone sold our coordinates. Get them out. Get them out now. The footage jumped, skipped, showed aftermath, 6 men wounded, 4 civilians on the ground, bullet holes in their heads, execution style, professional. Then Ghost's voice, recorded later, overlaid on the footage, February 12, 1991. Operation Sandstorm. Mission was extraction of 4 Iraqi chemical weapons scientists. They had evidence of U.S. supplied precursors during Iran-Iraq War. Evidence that would destroy credibility of previous administration. Someone leaked our position. Someone wanted those scientists dead. Someone in our command structure betrayed us. I am going dark. I will find them. I will prove it. I will make them answer. The tape ended. The room was silent. Torres had both hands flat on the table. Kane's face had gone blank. The analyst's mask. Sullivan's lips moved in silent prayer. Rourke spoke first. His voice was steady, but something underneath it was not. That footage is classified at levels that should not exist. How did Ghost get it? Riley answered without hesitation. Because he was the one holding the camera. He recorded it, kept a copy, spent 25 years gathering everything else to support it. Torres looked up. If this is real, if Ghost was right, then one of us killed 4 defectors and got 6 of our own men nearly killed in the process. His jaw tightened, and then spent 34 years covering it up. Kane pulled out his laptop, started typing. I can access CENTCOM logs from 91, cross-reference, who had access to operation coordinates. Narrow the field. Rourke stopped him. No, if Ghost was right about a leak, those logs are monitored. You access them, and whoever we are hunting will know we are close. Then how do we narrow it? Torres demanded. We have 6 names. Ghost eliminated 1. That leaves 5. 2 are in this room. We cannot operate like this. Riley's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She pulled it out, read the message. Her face did not change, but her hand tightened around the phone hard enough that her knuckles went white. She held it up. Let them read it. You open the box. Ghost spent 25 years hiding what was inside. Now 6 people know. That is 5 too many. Check your vehicles. They ran, all 5 of them, out the archives, across the parking lot, to the 2 SUVs parked in the shade. Torres got there first, dropped to his knees, looked under the chassis. His voice when he called out was tight. C4, remote detonator, armed. Kane checked the second vehicle. Same. They backed away. Slow, careful. Called base security. Bomb squad arrived in 8 minutes. Disarmed both devices in 20. The text confirmed. Military grade. Professional placement. Remote trigger. Someone had been watching. Someone knew exactly where they were. Someone wanted them dead or wanted them scared. Hard to tell which. Riley stood at the edge of the parking lot, watching the bomb squad work, her mind running calculations. Ghost Journal had mentioned this, had warned that the network would respond to investigation with escalation, that pressure would be met with pressure, that the closer you got, the more dangerous it became. She looked at Rourke, at Torres, at Kane, at Sullivan. One of them might have sent that text, might have placed those bombs knowing the team would find them. A warning, a message, I can reach you whenever I want. Or none of them did, and they were all targets. Rourke approached, stood beside her, watched the bomb squad load the explosives into containment units. His voice when he spoke was quiet, meant only for her. Ghost's list has 6 names. One of them just tried to kill us. He turned to look at her. That means one of us in that room is the traitor. Or you are. Or Brennan is. Or Cross is. Riley met his eyes. Do you believe I am the traitor? No. He said it without hesitation. Because if you were, you would have let those bombs kill us. You would not have shown us the text. You would have walked away and let it happen. She nodded. Then we narrow the field. We force them to show themselves. We do what Ghost could not do because he was alone. She gestured to the team. We use the one advantage he never had. Numbers, trust, the willingness to put our lives in each other's hands and see who flinches. How? Riley pulled the journal from her vest. Opened it to the last page. The final entry, March 2012. 2 weeks before Ghost died. She had read it 100 times, had memorized every word, but seeing it here now, with bombs being loaded into trucks and the smell of explosives in the air, it hit different. She read aloud, I have created insurance. I have hidden proof of Reaper's identity in a location only my heir will find. When Riley finds it, she will have everything needed to expose the network. But there is a cost. The proof implicates others. People who thought they were doing the right thing. People who believed the lie. Exposing Reaper means exposing them all. Riley will have to choose. Justice or mercy, truth or peace. I pray she chooses wisely. I pray I trained her well enough to know the difference. Below the entry was a notation. Small, almost hidden. Riley had missed it the first dozen times she read the page. But Ghost had taught her to look for patterns, to see what was meant to be invisible. She had found it 3 days ago. UV reactive ink, visible only under blacklight. Coordinates, 45.7 degrees north, 110.4 degrees west, depth 40 feet. Torres looked over her shoulder. That is Yellowstone, middle of nowhere. He paused. Depth 40 feet means underground. He buried something. Kane pulled out his tablet, cross-referenced the coordinates. That location is 15 miles from the nearest road. Backcountry, restricted area. You would need permit to access and equipment to excavate. Riley closed the journal. We get the permit. We get the equipment. We find what Ghost buried. Then we know who Reaper is. Then we finish this. Rourke studied her, at the determination in her face, at the way she held Ghost's journal like it was scripture, at the tattoo on her skin that marked her as the inheritor of a legacy most people would have run from. He made a decision, the kind of decision commanders make when all the options are bad and you choose the one that might kill you slower than the others. We move together. All 5 of us. We do not separate. We do not trust outside communication. We verify everything. He looked at Torres, at Kane, at Sullivan. One of us might be Reaper, or we are all targets. Either way, we survive by staying together until we know which. Sullivan spoke for the first time since the archives. His voice carried the weight of a man whose faith in institutions had just been shaken and was looking for something solid to replace it. Commander, if we do this, if we find Ghost's evidence, if we expose Reaper, what happens to the teams, to the trust, to everything we built our lives on? Rourke's answer was immediate. The same thing that happens when you cut cancer out. It hurts, it scars, but you survive. He looked at Riley. And Ghost's heir gets to decide if the pain was worth it. Riley's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. She read the message, showed it to Rourke. You think you are hunting. You are being hunted. Every step you take brings you closer to the truth. Every step closer to the truth brings you closer to the grave. Ghost died for this. How many more will you sacrifice? Turn back now, forget what you found, or join him. She deleted the message, looked at the four men, at the bomb squad loading the last of the explosives, at the sun dropping toward the horizon and painting the Georgia sky the color of old blood. I am not turning back. I am Ghost's heir. I finished what he started. She paused. But I need to know, right now, before we go any further, are you with me or are you the one sending these messages? The silence stretched. 10 seconds, 20, long enough for doubt to root, long enough for fear to whisper, long enough for anyone who wanted out to take it. Rourke spoke first. I am with you. Ghost saved my life 3 times. I owe him this. Torres nodded. I served with Ghost for 9 years. If someone betrayed us, I want to know who. I am in. Kane's voice was flat, analytical. I process information. This is the biggest information gap I have ever encountered. I need to close it. I am in. Sullivan touched his cross, looked at Riley with eyes that had seen too much and still wanted to believe in something. My faith tells me truth matters, even when it hurts. I am in. Riley looked at each of them, measuring, calculating, knowing that one of them might be lying and she would not know until it was too late. But Ghost had taught her this too, how to move forward when certainty was impossible, how to act when trust was a gamble and the stakes were everything. Then we go to Yellowstone. We find what Ghost buried. We expose Reaper, and we let the consequences fall where they fall. She met each man's eyes in turn, but understand this. If one of you is the traitor, if one of you sold those scientists, if one of you killed Ghost, I will know. And when I know, I will do what Ghost trained me to do. I will finish it. No hesitation, no mercy, just completion. The wind shifted, brought the smell of Georgia pine and distant rain. The bomb squad trucks pulled away. The sun touched the horizon and bled into the earth. 5 people stood in a parking lot at Fort Benning and made a promise that would carry them into the wilderness and toward a truth that had been buried for 34 years. A truth that would cost more than any of them knew. A truth that Ghost had died protecting. A truth that Riley would kill to expose. One of them was lying. The question was which one? The answer was waiting in Yellowstone, 40 feet down, where Ghost had left it, where his heir would find it, where everything would finally come to light or be buried forever. They moved to the vehicles. 5 people, 1 mission, too many secrets, not enough trust. The drive to Yellowstone would take 2 days. 2 days to plan, to prepare, to watch each other for the signs Ghost had taught Riley to see. The micro-expressions, the hesitations, the tells that separated truth from performance. Somewhere ahead, Reaper was waiting, watching, calculating, preparing for the moment when Ghost's heir would finally understand what her grandfather had known. That some truths were worth dying for, that some lies were worth killing to protect, that the line between justice and revenge was drawn in blood, and Ghost had spent 25 years making sure Riley knew which side she stood on. The engine started. The convoy formed, 5 people moving toward a destination none of them would reach unchanged. The sun finished dying. The night came in fast and complete. And in the darkness, Riley Garrett touched the tattoo on her skin and felt Ghost's presence like a hand on her shoulder. Guiding, warning, reminding her of the last thing he had ever said to her face to face before he died. When you find the truth, you will have to choose. Save them or expose them. Mercy or justice. I cannot tell you which is right. I can only tell you the choice will define you. Choose carefully. Choose with your eyes open. And whatever you choose, live with it the way I lived with mine. She had not understood then. She was beginning to understand now. And the understanding was heavier than any weapon she had ever carried. The Montana safe house did not exist on any map that civilian eyes would ever see. Riley had known about it since she was 16. Ghost had brought her here twice. Once to teach her how to disappear. Once to show her where the evidence lived. She had not been back in 6 years. The barn looked exactly the same. Rotted wood, sagging roof. The kind of structure farmers abandoned when the land stopped producing and nobody cared enough to demolish what was left behind. The convoy stopped a quarter mile out. 5 people in 2 vehicles. Rourke killed the engine, looked at Riley in the passenger seat. Her eyes were scanning the tree line, the ridges, the approach vectors, doing the math Ghost had taught her to do before stepping into any space that might contain threats. How many times did he bring you here? Twice. Summer 2010, winter 2011. She opened the door, stepped out. The Montana air hit different than Georgia. Thin, cold even in August. The kind of cold that lived in your bones and reminded you how small you were against the landscape. He said this was insurance. His voice when he said it was not proud, just tired, like a man who had been carrying weight for so long. He forgot what it felt like to stand straight. Torres exited the second vehicle, Kane and Sullivan following, all three scanning, processing. Torres had his hand near his sidearm, not on it, near it, the gesture of a man who had been in enough bad situations to know the difference between paranoia and preparation. Kane pulled out a tablet, started running thermal imaging on the barn structure. Sullivan touched the cross around his neck, lips moving in silent prayer that might have been prayer or might have been something else. The barn is clear. Kane's voice was flat, but there is a heat signature below ground level, approximately 20 feet down, consistent with ventilation system for underground structure. Riley walked toward the barn, did not wait for permission, did not look back to see if they followed. The door was locked with a padlock that had not been there 6 years ago. She examined it. New, military grade, biometric scanner hidden in the rust paint. She pressed her thumb to it, felt the warmth of the scanner reading her print, comparing it to a database that Ghost had programmed before he died. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside the barn smelled like hay and motor oil, and something underneath that was pure Ghost. Gun solvent, old coffee, the particular scent of a man who lived alone and did not apologize for it. The floor was dirt. She walked to the center, counted 12 steps from the door, turned left, 6 steps, stopped, knelt, brushed away the surface layer of dirt, found the metal ring flush with the ground, pulled. The hatch opened on hydraulic hinges, silent, well-maintained. Below was a ladder descending into darkness, lit by dim emergency lighting. She did not hesitate. Climbed down, boots finding each rung with the certainty of muscle memory. 20 feet. The bottom was concrete, cold. The space opened into a room that was part bunker and part archive, and entirely the product of a man who had spent 25 years building a case that no one wanted him to build. The others came down behind her, one at a time. Rourke first, then Torres, Kane, Sullivan last. They stood at the bottom and looked at what Ghost had left behind, and nobody spoke for a full 10 seconds because there were no words adequate to the moment. The walls were covered in documentation, photographs, maps, strings connecting faces to places to dates. 25 years of investigation laid out in a pattern that would have seemed like madness to anyone who did not understand what they were looking at. But Riley understood, and as she walked the perimeter of the room touching the edges of photographs and reading Ghost's handwriting in the margins, she felt something in her chest loosen and tighten at the same time. This was his life, all of it. The 25 years he spent pretending to be dead, the evidence he gathered in pieces, the connections he made in darkness, the truth he assembled alone because he could not trust anyone to help him. It was laid out on these walls like a map to a country that only existed in his mind. And now Riley was standing in that country, and it was more real than anything she had ever known. Torres moved to the far wall, stopped in front of a section dedicated to Operation Sandstorm, photographs of the 4 Iraqi scientists, alive, smiling, children in their arms, dated February 11th, 1991, the day before they died. Below the photographs was Ghost's handwriting, large, angry, the only place in the entire room where his control had slipped. They trusted us. We failed them. I will not fail them again. Kane found the equipment wall, surveillance gear, communications, intercept devices, everything Ghost had used to monitor the people he suspected. Most of it was outdated now, but in the 1990s and 2000s, it had been cutting edge. The kind of technology that required serious money and serious connections to acquire. Kane examined a signal processor, turned it over, found the serial number. This is NSA hardware, decommissioned 2003. How did Ghost get this? Rourke answered without looking away from the wall of suspects. Because Ghost was not just investigating, he was being helped. Someone inside the intelligence community was feeding him equipment, information, access. He turned, looked at Riley. Did he tell you who? No, but the journal mentions a contact, codename Shepard. Ghost wrote that Shepard believed the Sandstorm betrayal went higher than anyone suspected, that exposing it would require resources Ghost did not have alone. Sullivan found the filing cabinets, 6 of them, each labeled with a name. He opened the one labeled Daniel Rourke. Inside were documents, photographs, financial records, deployment logs, everything Ghost had compiled on Rourke across 30 years. Sullivan's face went pale. He closed the drawer, opened the one labeled Ben Torres, same. Opened Eric Kane, same. Nathan Cross, Sarah Brennan, Marcus Hale. He has files on all of us. Sullivan's voice shook. Everything we ever did, everyone we ever knew. He was watching us for decades. His hand went to his cross again. How can we trust each other if Ghost did not even trust his own students? Because Ghost's job was to doubt. Rourke moved to the filing cabinets, pulled out his own file, started reading. His face showed nothing but his hands tightened on the pages. Our job is to verify. Ghost gave us the evidence. Now we use it. Riley walked to the center of the room, to the photograph that dominated the space. 12 men in desert camouflage, 1991. Operation Sandstorm Team. Ghost was third from the left. Younger, harder, eyes that had not yet learned to carry the weight they would spend the next 20 years carrying. Beside him was Rourke, Torres, a dozen others. Some she recognized from ghost stories. Some were just faces. But all of them were operators who had trusted each other with their lives. And one of them had betrayed that trust in a way that could never be repaired. She pulled the files one by one, Shaima. Read them standing, absorbing what Ghost had learned, what he had verified, what he had only suspected. The information was dense, detailed, obsessive. But patterns emerged. And as Riley read, those patterns started to assemble into something that looked like an answer. Rourke's file contained financial records showing an inheritance in 1997. $340,000 from an uncle who did not exist. Ghost had traced the money, dead end, offshore account, no paper trail, but the timing was suspicious. 6 years after Sandstorm, right when Ghost went underground. The money could have been payment, could have been blackmail, could have been inheritance from a relative Ghost had not known about. No way to verify. Torres's file was cleaner. 26 years of decorated service, family man, 3 children, wife of 22 years. No financial irregularities, no suspicious associations. But Torres had been in Iraq in February 1991 as intelligence liaison. He had access to operation coordinates. He had means and opportunity. Ghost's note in the margin asked the question that mattered. Motive? Torres lives for the teams. Would he betray for money, ideology, blackmail? No evidence. Only possibility. Kane's file was different. He had not been part of the original Sandstorm team. He was too young. He joined JSOC 3 weeks after the operation, rapid promotion, sponsors unknown. Ghost had traced his career advancement. Someone had fast-tracked him, someone with serious influence. The question was, who and why? Kane's note from Ghost was underlined twice. Who owed him a favor? Cross's file was the thickest. Ghost's mentor from 1982 to 1991. Legendary operator, commander of SEAL Team 6 during the golden years, retired suddenly in 2002, became private military contractor, current net worth $8 million. Ghost's notes were conflicted. On one page, admiration, on another, suspicion, on another, something that looked like betrayal. The final entry was dated 2011, 1 year before Ghost died. If Nathan is Reaper, I trained under the enemy for 9 years. I taught him everything I knew, and he used it against me. Brennan's file was the most recent. She had not been military. She was CIA. Career began in 1991. First assignment was investigating the Sandstorm failure. Ghost's question was simple and devastating. Did she investigate or was she assigned to cover up? Her career had advanced steadily. No major mistakes, no scandals, but also no major successes. The kind of career that stayed in the shadows and accumulated power through patience rather than brilliance. Ghost's final note on her file was dated March 2012, 2 weeks before he died. Brennan is the key. She knows who Reaper is. She might be Reaper, or she is protecting Reaper. Force her hand, make her choose. Hale's file was crossed out, confirmed clean 2012. But Riley opened it anyway, read what Ghost had found. Master Chief Marcus Hale, Armory Officer, 1980 through 2010, died 2012. Heart attack, age 61, no family except daughter Amy. Ghost had investigated Hale for 8 years, found nothing, but in 2012 something changed. Ghost wrote Hale came to me, confessed he replaced firing pin on rifle after sandstorm, said he was coerced, said they threatened his daughter, gave me name, died 3 days later. Heart attack ruled natural. Not natural, but Hale was not Reaper. Hale was victim. Riley closed the last file, looked at the 4 men standing in Ghost Sanctuary, at Rourke reading his own file with a face like stone, at Torres staring at the photograph of the sandstorm team, at Kane running thermal scans on the walls looking for hidden compartments, at Sullivan praying in the corner with his back to everyone. One of them might be Reaper, or none of them, but the answer was here, in this room, in these files, in the evidence Ghost had spent a quarter-century gathering. She just needed to find the pattern, the connection, the thing that Ghost had seen but had not been able to prove before they killed him. She pulled the brass casing from her pocket, the .338 Lapua Magnum that Ghost had left in the Fort Benning locker. The inscription read, "Verify before trust." She turned it over in her hands, examined the firing pin impression, the extractor marks, the unique signature that every rifle left on every casing it fired. Ghost had taught her to read these marks when she was 17, had made her examine hundreds of casings until she could identify a rifle from a single fired round. This casing was evidence. Ghost had written that in the journal, evidence that could be matched to the rifle that fired it, evidence that would prove who was in position to sell the coordinates in 1991. The question was whether that rifle still existed, whether it was in an evidence locker somewhere, whether it could be found and tested and matched to this casing. She looked at Kane. "Can you access the SEAL Armory database from here?" Kane pulled out his laptop, started typing. Ghost had satellite internet installed, military-grade encryption. "I can access anything from here. What am I looking for?" Rifle inventory from February 1991. Operation Sandstorm. Find which rifles were signed out for the mission. Match the serial numbers to current locations. Kane's fingers moved across the keyboard with the efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times, the screen filled with data. He filtered, sorted, cross-referenced. 3 minutes later, he had the list. 12 rifles signed out, all M14 variants, 7.62 NATO, standard loadout for that era. He scrolled through the records. 8 rifles returned to Armory February 19. 4 did not return, lost in action, destroyed. Riley leaned over his shoulder. "Which 4? Kane highlighted them. Serial numbers Alpha 773, Alpha 776, Alpha 781, Alpha 792. He pulled up disposition reports. All 4 listed as destroyed during ambush. No recovery. Find the 8 that returned. Cross-reference maintenance logs. Look for firing pin replacements. Kane typed faster. The screen refreshed. Maintenance logs appeared. He scrolled through years of records. Oil changes, barrel replacements, stock repairs. Then he stopped. Highlighted one entry, March 1991, 1 month after sandstorm. Rifle Alpha 768, firing pin replaced. Authorized by Master Chief Marcus Hale. Reason listed as excessive wear. But Kane's voice had changed. Found something else. He opened another window. This rifle was signed out to Daniel Rourke for Operation Sandstorm. The room went silent. Rourke looked up from his file, looked at the laptop screen, at the maintenance record with his name on it. His face showed nothing, but Riley had been trained by Ghost to see what people tried to hide. She saw the micro-expression, the tightening around his eyes, the shift in his breathing. Not guilt, recognition. "I remember that replacement." Rourke's voice was steady. "I brought the rifle to Hale in March, told him the firing pin felt loose. He replaced it. Standard maintenance. Or he replaced it to destroy evidence." Torres moved closer, away from the wall. His hand was on his sidearm now. Not near it, on it. "You were the one holding that rifle in Sandstorm. You were in position. You had access to coordinates." Riley held up her hand. "Stop. Think. If Rourke was Reaper, why would he bring the rifle in for maintenance? Why draw attention to it? Why not just destroy it?" "Because he needed an alibi." Torres did not move his hand. He knew Ghost was investigating, knew the firing pin could be matched. So he brought it in, made it look like standard maintenance, let Hale replace it. Then when Ghost came looking, the evidence was gone. Kane closed his laptop. There was another possibility. What if Rourke brought the rifle in because someone told him to? What if Hale called him, said the rifle needed maintenance? What if the replacement was not Rourke's idea? Sullivan stopped praying, turned to face them. His voice was quiet, broken. What if Hale was forced to call Rourke? What if Reaper used Hale to destroy the evidence and Rourke never knew? Riley looked at the casing in her hand, at the inscription, "Verify before trust." Ghost had left this for a reason, not to prove who was guilty, to prove who was innocent. The firing pin on Rourke's rifle was replaced, but there were 7 other rifles, 7 other firing pins. One of them might still match this casing. "Where are the other 7 rifles now?" she asked Kane. Kane opened his laptop again, pulled up current inventory. 4 are still in active service. 3 were decommissioned and sent to federal evidence storage. He looked up. Fort Meade, Maryland. We can access them. How long to get there? 2 days. Driver, we fly commercial. Either way, we are exposed. Then we drive. Riley looked at Rourke, at Torres, at Kane, at Sullivan. We verify. We test every rifle. We match the casing. We eliminate suspects until only one remains. That is what Ghost would do. That is what we do. But before we leave, she walked to the filing cabinet labeled Marcus Hale, pulled it open. Inside were the same documents as the other files. Service records, financial statements, medical history, but at the bottom was a photograph. Hale with his daughter, me Hale, age maybe 22, graduation photo. Amy was smiling. Hale was proud, the kind of photograph a father kept in his wallet. Ghost had found it somewhere, had included it in the file, and below it was a note in Ghost's handwriting. Amy Hale, current employment C, EA Logistics, hired 2003, age 22. No prior government experience. Sponsor unknown. Possible leverage point. Contact if Hale path goes cold. Riley pulled out her phone, looked at the 4 men. I need to make a call. Alone. She walked to the corner of the bunker, dialed the number Kane had pulled from CIA employee records. It rang 4 times, then a woman's voice. Professional. Guarded. This is Amy Hale. Miss Hale, my name is Riley Garrett, Frank Garrett's granddaughter. I need to ask you about your father in February 1991. Silence on the other end, long enough that Riley thought the call had dropped. Then Amy's voice came back different, smaller. I don't know what you are talking about. Your father replaced the firing pin on a rifle 1 month after Operation Sandstorm. Someone ordered him to destroy evidence. I need to know who. More silence. Riley waited. Let it stretch. Ghost had taught her that silence was a tool, that people filled silence with truth when they would not fill conversation with it. She counted to 30. Then Amy spoke. My father told me something before he died. He said if anyone ever asks about Sandstorm, tell them I did it to protect you. They threatened to kill you if I did not help them cover it up. She paused. He never said who they were. He just said the general has cross to bear and he makes others carry it for him. Riley's blood went cold. The general has cross to bear. Not a metaphor. A name. General Nathan Cross. Ghost's mentor. The man who taught him everything. The man Ghost suspected but could not prove. The man who was now a private military contractor worth $8 million and had retired suddenly in 2002, right when the scrutiny of post-9/11 military operations would have exposed any irregularities in his record. Did your father say anything else? He said he was sorry. He said he tried to protect me and ended up protecting a monster instead. He died 3 days later. Heart attack. She paused. It was not a heart attack. How do you know? Because 2 days before he died, a man came to our house, never gave a name, just said my father had made the right choice and that choice would keep me safe as long as he kept making it. My father was terrified. I had never seen him scared. The next morning, he told me about Sandstorm. That night, he died. Riley closed her eyes, felt the weight of it. Hale had been coerced, threatened through his daughter, forced to destroy evidence, then killed when he told Ghost the truth. And Amy had been living with that knowledge for 12 years, afraid to speak, afraid the same people who killed her father would come for her. Thank you, Miss Hale. What you told me just eliminated one suspect and pointed to another. She ended the call, walked back to the group. They were all watching her waiting. It was Cross. She said it flat. No emotion, just fact. Cross blackmailed Hale using his daughter, forced him to replace the firing pin, killed him when he confessed to Ghost. Ghost suspected Cross but could not prove it. Now we can. Rourke's face had not changed, but something behind his eyes had. Relief maybe? Or vindication? Or just the cold satisfaction of a man who had been under suspicion and was now cleared. If it is Cross, we need to be careful. He is connected. Pentagon, defense contractors, private military firms across 3 continents. He has resources we do not. Then we use what we have. Riley looked at each of them. We have Ghost's evidence. We have the casing. We have Amy Hale's testimony. And we have the one thing Cross does not expect. We have each other. Kane was already typing, pulling up Cross's current location. Pentagon consultant, office in Arlington. He is scheduled to be there tomorrow. Meeting with DOD Acquisition Board. Riley made a decision. The kind Ghost had taught her to make when all the options were bad, and you chose the one that gave you the most control over the outcome. We confront him. Tomorrow. Pentagon, public place. He cannot kill us all in front of witnesses. We lay out the evidence, we force him to react, and we watch how he reacts. That will tell us if he is Reaper or if there is someone above him. That is insane. Torres said it with the certainty of a man who had spent 26 years not doing insane things and staying alive because of it. Cross is not going to confess just because we show up with a casing and a daughter's testimony. No, but he will show us something. Riley had Ghost's journal open to the final pages. The entries from 2011. The ones written after Ghost had narrowed the suspects. Cross is either Reaper or he knows who Reaper is. Either way, he is the key. We push him. We see where he breaks. Rourke studied her, at the determination in her face, at the way she held the journal like it was a weapon, at the tattoo visible at her collar reminding everyone in the room that she was not just some 22-year-old with a theory. She was Ghost's heir, trained for this, prepared for this, and she was going to finish it whether they helped or not. We go together. Rourke's voice had the tone of command again. All 5 of us. We do not separate. We verify everything. And if Cross is Reaper, we bring him in. Not kill him. Bring him in. Let the system work. Riley nodded, but her hand went to the knife in her boot. The one Ghost had given her when she was 16. The one she had carried every day since. The one that had Ghost's initials carved in the handle. She did not say what she was thinking. That if Cross was Reaper, the system would not work because Cross was part of the system. That justice for Ghost might require something outside official channels. That she had been trained for more than just investigation. They spent the night in the bunker, taking shifts on watch, sleeping in the corner where Ghost had kept a cot and a sleeping bag. Riley took first watch, sat at the center of the room, surrounded by 25 years of her grandfather's work, and felt the weight of it pressing down like atmosphere. All those photographs, all those documents, all those years of a man living alone in the dark because he could not trust anyone with the truth. She thought about what Ghost had written in his final entry, about how Riley would have to choose between justice and mercy, between exposing everything and burying parts of it, between truth and peace. She had not understood what he meant then, but sitting here now in his sanctuary surrounded by evidence of institutional betrayal, she was starting to understand. Some truths destroyed more than they healed. Some lies protected more than they harmed. And the line between them was drawn in blood, and Ghost had spent 25 years walking that line until it killed him. Sullivan took second watch. Riley lay down on the cot, closed her eyes, did not sleep, just lay there in the darkness and listened to the breathing of 4 men who might be allies or might be something else. Torres snored. Kane muttered in his sleep. Rourke was silent. Sullivan's rosary beads clicked softly as he prayed. The sound was rhythmic, steady, the sound of a man whose faith had been tested and was holding on with both hands. Morning came cold and gray. They packed the evidence they needed, the casing, the files, photographs, everything that would support the confrontation with Cross. Riley locked the bunker behind them, reset the biometric scanner. The barn looked abandoned again. No sign anyone had been there. Ghost's final hiding place disappearing back into the Montana landscape like it had never existed. They drove in convoy again. 2 vehicles, 18 hours to Arlington, Virginia. They rotated drivers every 4 hours, stopped only for fuel and food, spoke only when necessary. The conversation from the bunker had settled into something heavier. They all knew what they were driving toward, a confrontation that would either expose a traitor or get them all killed. The math was not good, but it was the only math they had. Torres drove the second shift, Riley in passenger seat. He spoke without looking at her. His voice was quiet, meant only for her. Ghost trained you for this. Not just the investigation, the aftermath. What comes after we expose Reaper? Have you thought about that? Every day since I found his journal. And I think Ghost knew the aftermath would be worse than the crime. That exposing sandstorm would not just catch one traitor. It would implicate dozens of people who thought they were doing the right thing. Officers who followed orders, politicians who approved operations, civilians who trusted the system. Ghost wrote that the proof he gathered would destroy more than it would heal. Then why did he gather it? Because he believed some truths were too important to bury, even if exposing them hurt people who did not deserve to be hurt. She looked at Torres. Do you think he was right? I think Ghost spent 25 years alone because he could not answer that question. Torres's hands tightened on the wheel. I think he left it to you because he hoped you were wiser than him, that you would know when to pull the trigger and when to let it go. They arrived at Arlington at 0600. Pentagon rose in the distance. 5 sides, 5 rings. The symbol of American military power since 1943. Inside that building, Cross had an office. Inside that building, he advised on weapons procurement. Inside that building, he had access to classified information that made him untouchable unless the evidence against him was perfect. Riley had the evidence. Now she needed to see his face when she showed it to him. They waited in the parking garage. Cross arrived at 0730, drove a black Mercedes, parked in a reserved spot, got out carrying a briefcase and moving with the unhurried confidence of a man who had spent 40 years in uniform and knew exactly where he belonged. Riley watched him through binoculars, studied his face, looked for the tells Ghost had taught her to see. But Cross gave nothing away. He was a professional, had been one since before Riley was born. She put down the binoculars, looked at Rourke. Now, they intercepted him at the elevator. 5 people appearing from the stairwell, surrounding him without touching him. Cross stopped, looked at Rourke first. Recognition, then at Riley. Calculation, then at the others. Assessment. His face showed nothing but his hand moved to his phone. Stopped. Did not make the call. Daniel, his voice was warm, genuine. The voice of a mentor greeting a former student, and this must be Riley Garrett, Frank's granddaughter. He extended his hand to her. Your grandfather was the finest operator I ever had the privilege to serve with. Riley did not take his hand. We need to talk, privately. Cross glanced at his watch. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. Cancel it. Something in Riley's voice made Cross's expression shift. Not fear, interest. He nodded slowly. There is a conference room on sub-level 2. Secured, we can talk there. They followed him down, through corridors that smelled like floor wax and institutional coffee, into a room with concrete walls and a steel table and no windows. Cross closed the door behind them, sat down without being asked, folded his hands on the table with the patience of a man who had been in worse rooms than this, and walked out. What is this about? Riley placed the brass casing on the table, slid it across to him. 338 Lapua Magnum, fired during Operation Sandstorm, February 1991. Ghost left this for me before he died, along with instructions to verify before I trust anyone. Cross picked up the casing, examined it, turned it over in his hands. The inscription caught the fluorescent light. Verify before trust. He set it back down, met Riley's eyes. What are you asking me, Riley? I am asking if you sold our coordinates to Iraqi forces. If you got 6 operators nearly killed. If you executed 4 scientists to cover up U.S. complicity in Iraq's chemical weapons program. If you blackmailed Marcus Hale using his daughter's life. If you killed Ghost when he got too close to proving it. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Cross did something Riley did not expect. He reached into his jacket, pulled out an identical brass casing, placed it next to Riley's. Same caliber, same markings, different inscription. This one read, trust but verify. I have been carrying this for 33 years. He let that land. Same operation. I fired this round, covering Ghost's extraction after the ambush. I have been investigating Sandstorm since 1991. Same as Frank. We were partners in this hunt. Riley's mind raced, processing, calculating, looking for the lie. But Cross's face showed nothing except weary truth. He pulled a folder from his briefcase, opened it. Inside were documents, decades of investigation, names, financial transfers, operational orders. Everything Ghost had gathered, Cross had too. I know who Reaper is. His voice was steady. I have known since 2009, but I could not prove it. Every time I got close, they disappeared the evidence, burned the sources, killed the witnesses. He looked at Riley. Frank and I were going to expose them in 2012. Then Frank died. Then Marcus Hale died. Then I realized anyone who gets close to exposing Reaper ends up dead. So I went quiet, waited, watched. Until now. Who is it? Rourke's voice cut through. If you know, tell us. Cross opened the folder, pulled out a photograph, placed it face down on the table. Before I show you this, you need to understand something. Reaper is not one person. Reaper is a network. 30 years of corruption built on the Sandstorm cover-up. Exposing one person will not end it. You need to take down the entire structure. And to do that, you need someone on the inside, someone they trust. He flipped the photograph. Sarah Brennan's face looked back at them from a CIA identification photo dated 1991. She was not assigned to investigate Sandstorm's failure. Cross's voice had gone cold. She was assigned to ensure it failed. She was CIA asset handler for an Iraqi double agent in 1991. She fed him our coordinates in exchange for intelligence on Saddam's weapons program. The 4 scientists we were extracting could have exposed that Brennan's intelligence about Iraqi WMDs was fabricated to justify future invasion. She killed them to protect her career. Torres was on his feet. That is impossible. Brennan has been helping us. She gave us the mission briefing. She told us about the archive auction. Because she knows about the auction, Cross looked at him. She is trying to buy the archive herself to destroy it before it can be used against her. He turned to Riley. Frank and I figured this out in 2011. We were going to expose her. Then Frank died. Bicycle accident. I knew it was not an accident, but I could not prove it. So I went underground, became a contractor, built connections, waited for the moment when I would have enough power to take her down. Riley's phone buzzed. Text from Torres. But Torres was standing right in front of her. She looked at the message. Her blood went cold. Get out now. Kane just accessed Brennan's CIA comm channel. Tactical team en route to Pentagon. ETA 4 minutes. She showed it to Rourke. He read it, looked at Kane. Did you access Brennan's channel? Kane pulled out his laptop, started typing. His face went white. Someone is using my credentials, remote access. They are spoofing my identity, making it look like I am reporting to Brennan. Cross stood. We need to leave right now. If Brennan has a tactical team coming, she is not here to arrest you. She is here to eliminate you. They ran, 5 people through Pentagon quarters, emergency exit, parking garage. Cross led them through routes he knew from 40 years of walking these halls. They reached the garage. Engines were already running. Black SUVs, no plates, blocking the exits. CIA tactical team. 4 operators exiting vehicles. Professional, moving with the precision of people who had done this 1,000 times and never failed. The team leader raised his hand, spoke with the calm authority of someone delivering a message he had delivered before. Riley Garrett. You are wanted for questioning regarding classified material theft. Riley's hand moved to her sidearm. Under whose authority? Deputy Director Sarah Brennan. Cross stepped forward. Put himself between Riley and the team. I am Brigadier General Nathan Cross, Department of Defense Oversight. These individuals are under my protective custody for ongoing investigation. The team leader hesitated. Sir, our orders come from CIA Director level, and my authority comes from Secretary of Defense. Stand down or I will have your credentials revoked in 10 minutes. The standoff held for exactly 8 seconds. Then the team leader made a decision. He lowered his weapon, signaled his team to do the same. Sir, we will need to verify your authority. You do that. Cross did not move. In the meantime, these people are leaving. They got to the vehicles, started engines, pulled out of the garage. Behind them, the tactical team was already on radios, calling for verification, calling for backup. They had maybe 10 minutes before the net closed. Sullivan drove the lead vehicle, Rourke beside him, Riley in back. She watched the mirrors, looking for the tail. It came fast. Black SUV, different from the tactical team vehicles. No markings, no lights, just speed and purpose. We have company. Sullivan saw it. Increased speed. The SUV matched. They were on the highway now. Morning traffic, civilians, the kind of environment where a firefight would kill bystanders. The SUV knew it, stayed back, patient, waiting for the right moment. Then the moment came. Intersection ahead, light turning yellow. Sullivan had to choose. Run it or stop. He chose to run it, made it through. The second vehicle with Torres, Kane, and Cross did not. They stopped. The black SUV came alongside. Riley saw it happen in slow motion through the rear window. The SUV ramming Torres's vehicle from the side. The sound of metal crushing. Glass shattering. The vehicle flipping, rolling, coming to rest on its roof. Doors crumpling. Windows gone. Sullivan stopped the car. He did. Riley was out before it fully stopped. Running back. Rourke behind her. Traffic was stopping. People screaming. The smell of gasoline and antifreeze and something burning. The black SUV circled back. Windows down. Riley saw the barrel of a rifle. Saw it aim. Saw the finger tighten on the trigger. She fired first. 3 rounds through the SUV's windshield. Driver slumped. Vehicle swerved. Hit a barrier. Stopped. She reached Torres's vehicle. It was on its roof, leaking fuel. Torres was hanging upside down from his seatbelt, conscious, bleeding from the head. Kane beside him, unconscious, breathing, Cross in the back, trapped. The door was crushed against his leg. He was trying to pull free, failing. Then she saw Sullivan. He had been thrown from the vehicle, 20 feet away, on the pavement, not moving. She ran to him, dropped to her knees, checked pulse, found it, weak, fading. His eyes opened, focused on her. His lips moved. "I was trying to protect you." His voice was barely a whisper. Called Brennan, tried to negotiate, told her we would stay quiet if she left us alone. She paused. She said there is no negotiating with ghosts. Riley's hands were already applying pressure to the wound in his side, trying to stop the bleeding, but there was too much, too fast. Sullivan's hand found hers, held it. "Tell Cross, tell him I believe, tell him the truth matters." His eyes went unfocused. His breathing stopped. Riley felt his pulse fade under her fingers, and she stayed there for 3 seconds. That felt like 3 hours because Ghost had taught her to verify death before moving on, and some training was so deep it became reflex even when you did not want it to be. She stood, looked at Rourke. He was pulling Torres from the wreckage. Kane was coming around, groaning. But Cross was still trapped. Riley went to him, examined the door. The metal was bent against his leg at an angle that would break bone if she pulled him free wrong. "Can you feel your foot?" "Yes." Cross's face was gray with pain, but yes. "Then we pull you straight back. Fast. One motion. Ready? Do it." She grabbed his shoulders. Rourke grabbed his other side. They pulled. Cross screamed, bit it off. The leg came free. Blood on his pants, bone showing through, but free. Sirens in the distance. Police. Ambulance. The civilian response to a highway accident that involved gunfire and a flipped vehicle and a dead man on the pavement. They had maybe 3 minutes before the scene became a crime scene and they became suspects. "We need to move." Kane was on his feet, limping, holding his ribs. "We cannot be here when police arrive. This will get classified above their jurisdiction and we will disappear into federal custody." Riley looked at Sullivan's body, at the cross still around his neck, at his lips that had been moving in prayer right before the SUV hit. She wanted to stay, wanted to close his eyes, wanted to give him the dignity he deserved. But Ghost had taught her that the dead did not need dignity. The living needed survival. And right now, survival meant leaving Sullivan behind and finishing what he had died trying to protect. She took the cross from his neck, put it in her pocket, looked at Cross. "Can you walk?" "Not well, but I can move." His leg was bad but not broken, painful but functional. They helped him to Sullivan's vehicle, got in. Torres drove this time. Kane in passenger seat running counter surveillance on his tablet. Riley and Rourke in back with Cross. They pulled away from the scene 30 seconds before the first police car arrived. Riley's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. She read the message, felt her stomach drop, showed it to the others. Sullivan called Brennan to negotiate. That was his mistake. You cannot negotiate with someone who has already decided you are dead. 4 of you remain. How many more will die before you realize you cannot win this? Turn back, forget the archive, forget Ghost, or join him. Tora's voice was tight. Where do we go? We cannot go back to the bunker. Brennan knows about it by now. We cannot go to any military installation. She has reach everywhere. Cross answered. His voice was strained but steady. Yellowstone. The coordinates Ghost left. Whatever he buried there, it is important enough that he spent his last 2 weeks making sure Riley could find it. We get there, we dig it up, we use it. That is the mission now. Kane looked at his tablet. Brennan just issued a federal warrant for all of you. Conspiracy to steal classified material. Treason. Murder of a CIA tactical officer. She is using the death of the driver Riley shot to justify lethal force authorization. Riley looked at the cross in her hand, at Sullivan's blood still wet on the metal, at the inscription on the back she had never noticed before. Truth sets free. She closed her fingers around it, felt the edges bite into her palm. Then we run. We get to Yellowstone. We find Ghost proof, and we finish this before Brennan finishes us. The drive took 36 hours. They rotated drivers, stopped only when they had to, paid cash for everything, stayed off cameras, used back roads. The kind of evasion Ghost had taught Riley when she was 18 and thought it was theoretical. Now it was survival. Cross spent most of the drive on encrypted calls, using contacts he had built over 40 years, calling in favors, building a network of support that would activate when they needed it. He did not share details, just made the calls and hung up and made more. By the time they crossed into Wyoming, he had made 27 calls, and his face had settled into something that looked like grim satisfaction. They reached the coordinates at dawn on the 3rd day, Yellowstone backcountry, 15 miles from the nearest road. They parked at a trailhead, hiked in with packs full of excavation equipment Kane had acquired from a construction supply store using a fake credit card. The terrain was rough, beautiful, the kind of landscape that existed before humans and would exist after. Riley had been here once, with Ghost. Summer 2010, he had brought her to this exact spot, had made her memorize the coordinates, had told her if he ever disappeared, this was where the truth lived. They reached the location at noon, a geothermal hot spring, steam rising from water that was too hot to touch. The ground around it was mineral deposits, colored in reds and yellows and whites, alien, like the surface of another planet. Kane pulled out ground-penetrating radar, scanned the area, found the void at 42 feet, exactly where Ghost said it would be. They started digging, taking turns, 2 hours of labor, rotating shifts. The hole deepened, the earth gave way to rock, then to metal. 40 feet down, they hit the cache, military-grade, watertight, sealed with a combination lock that required 6 digits. Riley knew the combination. Ghost's birthday backwards. She spun the dial, felt each number click into place. The lock opened. Inside was not what she expected. No documents, no files, just a hard drive, encrypted, and a letter in Ghost's handwriting. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were clear. She read it aloud, her voice steady. But something inside her was breaking. Riley, if you are reading this, I am dead, and you have survived everything I taught you to survive. I am proud. But I am also sorry. Sorry for what I am about to ask you to do. This hard drive contains proof of Operation Sandstorm's true purpose and Brennan's role. But it also contains something I discovered in 2010. Evidence that the 1991 WMD intelligence Brennan fabricated was not just wrong. It was deliberately designed to justify the 2003 Iraq invasion. She fed false intelligence to the Bush administration. She is responsible for a war that killed 4,000 Americans and 200,000 Iraqis. If you expose this, you will destroy her, but you will also destroy the reputations of everyone who relied on her intelligence. Generals who planned the invasion, politicians who voted for it, thousands of military families who believed their loved ones died for a just cause will learn they died for a lie. You can take this evidence to the media. Brennan goes to prison, justice is served, but the cost is national trauma on the scale of Watergate. Or you can bury it again. Let Brennan retire quietly. Let the dead rest. Preserve the institution's honor even if it does not deserve it. I spent 25 years chasing truth. But truth is a weapon. And like all weapons, it should only be fired when you are certain of the target and willing to accept the damage. I trained you to make hard choices. This is the hardest. Whatever you choose, you will have my respect. And you will have to live with it for the rest of your life. Like I live with every choice I made. Choose wisely, kid. The letter was signed Ghost. Below it was a date, March 14th, 2012, 2 weeks before he died. Riley folded the letter, put it in her pocket next to Sullivan's cross, looked at the hard drive in her hand, at the weight of what it contained, at the choice Ghost had left her. Torres spoke first. We need to see what is on that drive before we decide anything. Cross shook his head. We already know what is on it. Ghost told you. WMD fabrication, Iraq war justification, Brennan's role. The question is not what is on it. The question is what we do with it. Kane was already pulling out his laptop. I can decrypt it. Ghost's encryption is good but not unbreakable. Give me 6 hours. Riley's phone buzzed. She looked at it, expected another threat, another message telling her to turn back. Instead, it was a single line from a number she did not recognize. Hellfire missile authorization approved. Target your current GPS coordinates. Impact 90 seconds. Run. She showed the screen to Cross. His face went white. Brennan authorized a drone strike on U.S. soil, on American citizens. She is not even trying to hide it anymore. They ran, grabbed essential gear, left everything else. The hard drive, the letter, the equipment, all of it. Just ran through the geothermal field, away from the coordinates. 60 seconds, 40, 20. The missile hit with a sound that was less explosion and more the earth itself screaming. The shockwave knocked them flat. Heat washed over them. Debris rained down. When Riley looked back, the impact site was a crater. Everything they had left behind was gone, vaporized. The hard drive, the evidence, Ghost's letter, all of it erased in fire and pressure. She lay on the ground and felt the weight of it crushing her. Not the shockwave, the understanding. Brennan was willing to kill them on American soil, was willing to use military assets against civilians, was willing to destroy evidence in the most permanent way possible. This was not cover-up. This was war, and they were losing. Rourke pulled her up. We need to move. That strike will bring park rangers. Federal response. We have minutes before this area is locked down. They moved, away from the crater, into the forest. Following terrain Riley knew from her time with Ghost, paths that did not appear on maps, routes that only locals and Ghost knew. They moved for 3 hours without stopping. Then Cross collapsed. His leg had reopened, blood soaking through the field dressing. He could not go farther. Kane checked his tablet. We have no communications, no backup, no evidence. Brennan just destroyed everything Ghost spent 25 years gathering. We have nothing left. Riley looked at the 4 men, at Cross bleeding, at Torres exhausted, at Kane's face showing defeat for the first time, at Rourke who was still standing but barely. They had lost Sullivan, lost the archive, lost the hard drive, lost everything except their lives. And even those were borrowed time. But then she remembered something. Ghost's letter. She had put it in her pocket. Before they ran, before the missile hit, she pulled it out, unfolded it. The paper was creased, stained with dirt and sweat, but the words were still there. Ghost said the hard drive contained the evidence, but he did not say it was the only copy. She looked at Cross. You said you and Ghost were partners, that you both investigated, that you both gathered proof. Cross met her eyes, understood. I have a copy. Everything Ghost had I have, stored in 3 locations, physical and digital. Brennan can destroy one site, but not all of them. Then we use your copy. We finish this. We expose Brennan, and we let Ghost rest. How? Torres demanded. We are wanted fugitives. We have no credibility, no platform. Brennan controls the narrative. Even if we release the evidence, it will be called fake, dismissed as conspiracy. Riley pulled out her phone, made a call. The number was one Ghost had given her in 2011, had told her to use only if everything else failed. It rang once, then a voice answered, professional, efficient. This is Department of Defense, Inspector General. How may I direct your call? Riley spoke clearly. My name is Riley Garrett. I am calling to report treason, conspiracy, and murder. I have evidence. I have witnesses, and I am ready to testify. The voice on the other end paused, then came back different, more focused. Where are you? Yellowstone, under active threat. We need protection. We need extraction. And we need someone who is not compromised. Stand by. The line clicked. Hold music. Riley waited. 30 seconds, a minute, then a new voice. Male, older, authority in every syllable. This is General Marcus Webb, Inspector General. I am authorizing immediate extraction, air support en route, ETA 20 minutes. Stay on this line. Riley looked at the four men, at the hope starting to replace despair in their faces, at the understanding that maybe they had not lost. Maybe Ghost's plan had worked. Maybe the truth would finally come out. But in her pocket, she still felt Sullivan's cross, still felt the weight of what this would cost, still knew that exposing Brennan meant exposing everyone connected to her, that justice would wound more than just the guilty, that Ghost had left her this choice knowing she would have to live with it forever. The helicopter came in low and fast, military, no markings, landed 50 yards away, rotors never stopping. 6 soldiers exited, formed perimeter, team leader approached, saluted. Miss Garrett, General Webb sends his compliments. We are here to extract you to secure location. Please come with us. They boarded, all 5 of them. Torres helping cross, Kane carrying his laptop, Rourke last, making sure everyone was secure before he stepped on. The helicopter lifted. Yellowstone fell away below them. The crater where the missile had hit was smoking, black scar on pristine wilderness. Evidence of how far Brennan was willing to go and how close they had come to being erased the same way. Riley looked out the window, at the mountains, at the forests, at the landscape Ghost had loved, had chosen for his final hiding place, had trusted to keep his secrets until his heir was ready to claim them. She thought about his letter, about the choice he had given her, about truth versus mercy, justice versus peace. She had not decided yet, but she knew the decision was coming, knew it would define everything that came after. Knew Ghost was watching from wherever men like him went when they died, waiting to see if his training had been enough, if his faith in her had been justified, if his 25-year sacrifice would end in truth or silence. The helicopter flew toward an unknown destination, toward safety or toward the next trap, toward justice or toward compromise. Riley did not know which, but she knew one thing with certainty. Ghost had not trained her to quit, had not raised her to accept defeat, had not given her his mark and his mission just to watch her fail. Whatever came next, she would face it the way he had faced 30 years of darkness and betrayal and loneliness. With eyes open, with hands ready, with the willingness to pay any price for the truth, even if that truth destroyed everything she had left to lose. The helicopter descended through cloud cover that hung over the Appalachian Mountains like wet wool. Riley pressed her face to the window, watched the terrain emerge. Dense forest. No roads, no structures visible. Just wilderness that stretched in every direction until it met the curve of the earth. The kind of place that existed on maps, but not in the awareness of anyone who did not need to know it was there. They had been flying for 90 minutes. No communication, no explanation. Just the steady thrum of rotors and the occasional glance from the crew chief who sat by the door with his rifle across his knees and his eyes scanning the 5 passengers like he was trying to memorize faces for a report he would file later. Riley understood. They were fugitives now. Wanted by the CIA, accused of treason. The fact that they were on a military helicopter instead of in federal custody meant someone very powerful had intervened. But power was a currency that changed hands quickly in Washington. What protected them now might condemn them tomorrow. Cross sat across from her. His leg was elevated. Makeshift splint applied by Torres using webbing from the helicopter's emergency kit. His face was gray with pain, but his eyes were alert. Watching, calculating. The eyes of a man who had spent 40 years in situations where the difference between survival and death was measured in the quality of your decisions under pressure. He met Riley's gaze, nodded once. The nod said, "We are not safe yet, but we are closer than we were." The helicopter banked, descended, broke through the last layer of cloud, and Riley saw it, a facility that should not exist. Concrete bunker built into the side of a mountain. Camouflage netting. guard towers with thermal optics, perimeter fence that hummed with voltage. This was not a military base. This was a black site, the kind of place where people disappeared when the official system could not handle them. The kind of place Ghost had spent 25 years trying to expose because he believed transparency mattered more than security. And now Riley was landing at one voluntarily because the alternative was a bullet from Brennan's network. They touched down on a helipad that looked freshly poured, concrete still curing. The rotors spun down. The crew chief opened the door, gestured them out. 4 soldiers in unmarked fatigues waited at the edge of the pad. No insignia, no name tapes, just weapons and the posture of people who had done this enough times that it was muscle memory. The team leader approached, saluted Rourke, ignored everyone else. His voice was flat, professional. The voice of someone delivering information that had been scripted by someone else. Commander Rourke, General Webb is waiting. Medical staff will see to General Cross. The rest of you will be debriefed individually, then together. All communications are monitored. All movements are restricted. You are not under arrest, but you are not free to leave. Do you understand? Rourke's answer was equally flat. We understand. They were escorted inside, through blast doors that were 3 feet thick and sealed with hydraulics that hissed like something alive. The interior was sterile, white walls, LED lighting that was too bright and made everything look overexposed. The smell was antiseptic, recycled air. The particular scent of a space that was underground and sealed and had not felt natural atmosphere in years. Cross was taken left, toward medical. The others were taken right, through corridors that all looked identical. No windows, no art, no personality, just function. They were separated. Riley to one room, Rourke to another, Torres and Kane to third and fourth. The doors were solid, soundproof. When Riley's door closed behind her, she felt the silence press against her eardrums like a physical thing. The room contained a table, 2 chairs, a camera in the corner with a red light that said it was recording. Nothing else. She sat, placed her hands flat on the table. Ghost had taught her what to do when interrogated. Stay calm, control your breathing, answer only what is asked. Volunteer nothing. Wait for them to show their hand before you show yours. The door opened 10 minutes later. A man entered, late 50s, civilian clothes but military bearing. Hair cut to regulation even though he no longer wore uniform. He carried a folder, sat across from her, did not offer his hand, did not introduce himself. Just opened the folder and started reading. Riley Ann Garrett, born December 3rd, 1997. Parents deceased 2005. Raised by maternal grandparents until their death 2008. Then by Frank Garrett. No formal military service, no criminal record, no employment history. You are a ghost. He looked up, just like your grandfather. His voice was not hostile, just observational. The voice of someone stating facts and waiting to see how those facts would be disputed or confirmed. I was trained by ghosts to stay invisible until I needed to be seen. Riley's voice was steady. Now I need to be seen. The man closed the folder, leaned back, studied her with eyes that had spent decades reading people and deciding whether they were assets or liabilities. General Marcus Webb, Inspector General, Department of Defense. I authorized your extraction. Do you know why? Because someone called and said I had evidence of treason. No, because 30 minutes before your call, I received encrypted communication from Brigadier General Nathan Cross. He used authentication codes I gave him in 2011. Codes he was instructed to use only if he had proof of corruption at the highest levels of the intelligence community. He said you were carrying evidence that would implicate a deputy director of the Central Intelligence Agency in the murder of 4 Iraqi nationals, in the fabrication of intelligence that led to the Iraq War. He said you were Ghost's heir, and he said if I did not extract you immediately, Sarah Brennan would kill you and bury the truth for another 30 years. Riley's mind raced. Cross had contacted Webb before they even reached Yellowstone, had set the extraction in motion while they were still digging, had prepared the fallback before the primary plan failed. That was thinking 3 moves ahead. That was the kind of operational planning Ghost would have approved of. Cross was telling the truth then, about partnering with Ghost, about investigating Brennan. Webb nodded. Cross and your grandfather worked together from 1997 to 2012. I was their handler. Unofficial. Off the books. I provided resources when they needed them, access when they were blocked, and I promised that if either of them died before exposing Reaper, I would finish it. He paused. Frank died in 2012. I thought the investigation died with him. Then Cross went underground, became a contractor, disappeared from my radar. I assumed he had given up, but he had not given up. He was building evidence the way Frank taught him, slowly, carefully, waiting for the moment when he could strike without being killed for it. And now that moment is here. Webb's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted. That moment was here until Brennan authorized a hellfire strike on American citizens on American soil. That crossed a line, even for her. The Secretary of Defense is furious. The President has been briefed. Brennan is being recalled from Langley as we speak. She thinks she is coming to the White House for a security briefing. Instead, she will be arrested. Riley felt something in her chest loosen, felt the weight that had been pressing on her since Sullivan died eased by exactly 1 degree. Brennan would answer for what she did. For Ghost, for the scientists, for Sullivan. Justice was coming. Not perfect, not complete, but coming. Then why do you need me? Because arresting Brennan is easy. Convicting her is harder. She has 40 years of classified work, relationships at every level, people who owe her favors, people who will protect her because protecting her protects them. We need ironclad evidence. We need witnesses who cannot be discredited. We need the kind of case that ends in life imprisonment, not plea bargains and golden parachutes. Webb leaned forward. Cross says you have that evidence. Says Ghost left it for you. Says you are ready to testify, is he right? Riley reached into her pocket, pulled out 2 items, placed them on the table between them. Sullivan's cross, stained with his blood. The inscription, "Truth sets free," visible even through the dried brown. And Ghost's letter, creased, dirt-stained, the paper soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. The final words of a man who had spent a quarter-century preparing his heir for this exact moment. Webb picked up the letter. Read it slowly. His face showed nothing but his hands tightened on the paper. When he finished, he folded it carefully, placed it back on the table, looked at Riley with something that might have been respect or might have been pity or might have been both. Ghost gave you an impossible choice. He gave me the only choice that mattered. Truth or mercy, justice or peace. I have made my decision. What is your decision? Riley picked up Sullivan's cross, held it in her palm, felt the weight of it, felt Sullivan's presence in the metal, felt his faith in institutions, his belief that truth mattered. His final words, tell Cross the truth matters. She closed her fingers around it. I will testify. I will provide everything Ghost gathered. I will help you convict Brennan for murder, conspiracy, treason, the Sandstorm betrayal, the execution of 4 scientists, the cover-up that lasted 34 years. I will give you everything you need to put her in prison for life. She paused. But the Iraq War intelligence, the WMD fabrication, the evidence that 2003 invasion was built on lies Brennan created, that stays classified. Webb's eyebrows rose. That is the biggest piece. That is what will destroy her completely. That is also what will destroy 4,000 families who believe their sons and daughters died for something real. Riley's voice was steady, but something underneath it was not. Ghost wrote that truth is a weapon, that it should only be fired when you are certain of the target and willing to accept the damage. I am certain Brennan is the target. I am not willing to damage families who have already sacrificed everything. So you bury half the truth. I classify half the truth. For 50 years. By then, everyone who served in Iraq will be dead. Their children will be old enough to handle it. But not now, not while the wound is still fresh. She met Webb's eyes. Ghost spent 25 years chasing perfect justice. Never got it. I am choosing imperfect justice that I can live with. Brennan goes to prison. The institution stays intact. The families keep their honor. That is the deal. Webb was quiet for a long time. 10 seconds, 20. Long enough that Riley wondered if she had miscalculated, if Webb would reject the compromise, if he would demand full disclosure or nothing. But then he nodded, once, slow. The nod of a man who had made similar choices and understood their weight. I can work with that. The congressional hearing will be classified. Brennan will be charged with murder and conspiracy. The Iraq intelligence will be sealed under national security. She gets life in prison. The truth gets delayed. Not buried. Delayed. He extended his hand across the table. Ghost would approve. Riley shook it. Felt the grip, firm, honest. The handshake of someone making a promise they intended to keep. Then Webb stood, collected the letter and the cross, placed them in his folder. I need to debrief the others. Cross will verify your account. Rourke and Torres will testify to what they witnessed. Kane will provide technical analysis of Brennan's communications. Together, it will be enough. He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. One more thing. Brennan will try to make a deal. She will offer names, access to her network, intelligence on foreign assets. She will promise anything to avoid prison. Do not waver. Do not accept compromise. She killed your grandfather. She killed Sullivan. She tried to kill all of you. Some crimes do not get plea bargains. Riley's answer was immediate. I will not waver. Webb nodded, left. The door closed. Riley sat alone in the white room with the camera watching and the recycled air pressing against her and the weight of the choice she had made settling into her bones. She had chosen imperfect justice, had chosen to wound Brennan while protecting others, had chosen the path Ghost had prepared her for, even though he had not told her which path to take. She did not feel triumphant, did not feel relieved, just felt tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying weight for too long and finally being allowed to set it down. The debriefings took 6 hours, individual sessions, then group session, then technical review where Kane walked through Brennan's communications intercepts and showed how she had been tracking their investigation from the beginning, how she had known about Fort Benning, about the Montana bunker, about Yellowstone, how she had positioned assets to intercept them at every stage, how only Cross's counterintelligence work had kept them alive long enough to reach this room. By the time they finished, the sun had set outside. Not that Riley could see it, no windows, just the artificial day that never changed inside the facility. They were given quarters, small rooms with bunks and lockers and nothing personal. Military efficiency. Ghost would have felt at home here. Riley did not. She lay on the bunk and stared at the ceiling and thought about Sullivan, about how he had died trying to negotiate, about how Brennan had refused to even consider mercy, about how some people were so committed to their version of events that any challenge to it became existential threat. Brennan was arrested at 1800 hours. Webb told them the next morning, showed them footage from the White House. Brennan arriving, confident, prepared to brief the president on terrorist threats, instead being met by FBI agents, being read her rights, being taken into custody while she protested that this was a mistake, that she was a patriot, that she had spent 40 years protecting America. The footage showed her face when the lead agent told her the charges. Murder, conspiracy, treason. Showed the moment she understood this was not political, not bureaucratic, not something she could negotiate. This was criminal. This was final. Her face went blank, the mask she had worn for 4 decades locking into place, giving nothing away. But her hands shook, just barely, just enough. Riley watched the footage 3 times, looked for satisfaction, for closure, for the feeling that justice had been served, found only hollowness. Brennan in handcuffs did not bring Ghost back, did not bring Sullivan back, did not undo 34 years of lies. It was just an old woman being led away by younger men and the wheel turning the way it always turned, slowly, grinding, leaving debris in its wake. Cross was released from medical 2 days later. His leg was in a proper cast now, titanium pins holding the bone together. He would walk again, but not the same. Never the same. The kind of injury that became a permanent reminder. Every step for the rest of his life would echo with the memory of that highway chase, of Sullivan dying, of missiles and fire and the price of truth. They assembled in a conference room, all 5 of them, Webb at the head of the table. He laid out the next steps. Congressional hearing in 2 weeks. Classified, closed door, select committee on intelligence. Riley would testify first, then Cross, then Rourke, Torres, Kane. They would present evidence, Ghost Journal, the VHS tape, the brass casing, Amy Hale's testimony. Everything that proved Brennan had betrayed Sandstorm, had killed the scientists, had spent 3 decades covering it up. The Iraq intelligence fabrication would not be mentioned, would be sealed in a separate file, classified for 50 years under national security exemption. Only 3 people would have access: the President, the Secretary of Defense, and Webb. It would exist, would be documented, but would not be public. Not in Riley's lifetime, not in the lifetime of anyone who had served in Iraq. The compromise Ghost had foreseen, the choice he had left to his heir. "What about the network?" Kane asked. "Brennan did not work alone. Cross said there were 17 other operatives. Do we go after them?" Webb's answer was careful. 8 have been identified from Ghost's evidence. Arrests are pending. The other 9 are deeper, hidden better. It will take time to expose them. Years, maybe. He looked at Riley. This does not end with Brennan's conviction. The network will survive her, will adapt, will continue operating. The question is whether you are willing to spend your life hunting them the way Ghost spent his. Riley thought about that, about 25 years in darkness, about relationships sacrificed, about trust destroyed, about the loneliness of carrying secrets that could not be shared, about Ghost dying alone in Wyoming because he had pushed everyone away in pursuit of a truth that consumed him. She did not want that life, did not want to become what he had become, but she also understood that the work was not finished, that 9 operatives were still out there, that the network would rebuild if no one opposed it. "I will hunt them, but not alone." She looked at Rourke, at Torres, at Kane, at Cross. Ghost made the mistake of isolating himself. Thought trust was weakness. "I will not make that mistake. We finish this together. As a team, not as ghosts." Rourke nodded. "I am in." Torres, "I am in." Kane, "I am in." Cross smiled. It was the first time Riley had seen him smile. It changed his face, made him look younger, made him look like the mentor Ghost had written about in the early journal entries. Before the betrayal, before the paranoia, before 30 years of suspicion hardened him into something else. Frank would be proud. Cross's voice was quiet. He spent so long alone he forgot what teams were for. "You remembered. That makes you wiser than both of us." The congressional hearing was everything Webb promised. Classified, intense, thorough. Riley testified for 8 hours across 2 days. Walked the committee through Ghost's investigation, through the evidence, through the journal entries, through the pattern of deaths that followed anyone who got close to the truth. She showed them the VHS tape. Let them watch the ambush. Let them hear the scientists being executed. Let them see what Brennan had done and what she had covered up for 3 decades. Cross testified next, confirmed everything Riley said, added details from his own investigation, provided documents that corroborated Ghost's findings, financial transfers, communications intercepts, travel records that placed Brennan in contact with the Iraqi intelligence assets in the months before Sandstorm. The kind of evidence that built a case brick by brick until the structure was undeniable. Rourke and Torres testified to what they had witnessed: the bomb at Fort Benning, the tactical team at Pentagon, the highway attack that killed Sullivan, the missile strike at Yellowstone, the escalating violence that proved Brennan was not just covering up past crimes but actively murdering to prevent exposure. Kane provided technical analysis, showed how Brennan had accessed their communications, how she had tracked their movements, how she had positioned assets to intercept them, how only Cross's counterintelligence had created enough confusion to keep them alive. The committee listened, asked questions, took notes, and when it was finished, the chairman stood, thanked them for their service, and said the words that made it real. "We find sufficient evidence to proceed with prosecution. Sarah Brennan will stand trial for murder, conspiracy, treason. The classification of certain evidence will remain in effect per national security requirements, but justice will be served." The trial took 4 months. Federal court, military tribunal would have been faster, but Webb wanted civilian proceedings, wanted the legitimacy that came from the regular justice system, wanted Brennan to face a jury of citizens, not a panel of officers who might have sympathies. Riley did not attend most of it, could not sit in that courtroom day after day and watch Brennan's lawyers try to dismantle Ghost's work, try to claim he was paranoid, delusional, that his evidence was fabricated, that Riley was a troubled young woman manipulated by a dead man's obsession. She attended closing arguments, sat in the gallery while the prosecutor laid out the case, while Brennan's lawyer made his final plea. While the jury deliberated for 6 hours and came back with the verdict, guilty on all counts, Brennan showed nothing, just sat at the defense table with her hands folded and her face blank and her eyes staring at something no one else could see. The judge sentenced her to life without parole, federal supermax, solitary confinement for her own protection, because even in prison, there were people who did not forgive treason. She was led away in handcuffs, disappeared into the system she had spent 40 years manipulating. And Riley felt nothing, no satisfaction, no closure. Just the awareness that one chapter was finished and another was beginning. Ghost was cleared 6 weeks later. Official ceremony at Naval Special Warfare Command. His name restored to the Wall of Honor. Posthumous Medal of Honor presented to Riley as his only living relative. The citation read for extraordinary heroism and sacrifice in the pursuit of justice under circumstances of great personal danger. 25 years of service above and beyond the call of duty. The Navy secretary handed Riley the medal, shook her hand, said words that were scripted and sincere and meant nothing because Ghost was dead and medals did not bring back the dead. But the ceremony mattered. Not for Ghost, for the other operators, the ones who had served with him, the ones who had believed the official story that he died in a training accident, the ones who now knew he had spent a quarter century in the shadows protecting them from a threat they never knew existed. They lined up after the ceremony, one by one, shook Riley's hand, thanked her, told her stories about Ghost, about operations, about training, about the kind of leader he had been before the betrayal forced him underground. And Riley listened, collected those stories, added them to the journal, made sure Ghost's legacy was more than just the investigation, more than just the sacrifice, that it included the man he had been before the darkness claimed him. 6 months after Brennan's conviction, Riley stood at Ghost's grave in Wyoming. The headstone was new, black granite, simple. The inscription read, Frank Ghost Garrett, Chief Warrant Officer, United States Navy, SEAL Team 6, Original Cadre, 1945 to 2012, Medal of Honor. The truth beneath the dates. Honor, courage, commitment beneath his name. No mention of the 25 years underground. No mention of the investigation. Just the service. Just the sacrifice. Just the man. She placed a photograph at the base. Ghost with her grandmother Sharon. Dated 1983. Before the betrayal. Before the paranoia. When he still smiled without effort. When his eyes still held light instead of shadow. She placed Sullivan's cross beside it. The inscription, Truth Sets Free, Catching the Morning Sun. She had carried it for 6 months, had held it during the hearing, during the trial, during the nights when she woke up seeing Sullivan's face, hearing his last words. Tell Cross the truth matters. She had told him, had testified, had finished what Sullivan died trying to protect. Now she could let the cross rest, could let Sullivan rest, could let them both become memory instead of burden. Rourke approached from behind. She heard his boots on the grass, heard him stop. Respect the moment. When she turned, he was there with Torres and Kane, 3 men who had started this journey as suspects and ended it as brothers, who had buried Sullivan together, who had testified together, who had carried the weight together in a way Ghost never allowed himself to do. We have been discussing your future. Rourke's voice was gentle. The instructor position at Dam Neck is still available. Training the next generation. Passing on what Ghost taught you. It would honor his legacy. Riley had thought about this, had been offered the position twice, had turned it down both times because teaching felt too much like staying in one place, too much like building a life that could be disrupted when the next 9 operatives were found, too much like pretending the work was finished when it was not. I appreciate the offer, but I cannot accept. Why not? Because there are 9 people still out there, 9 members of Brennan's network who are watching to see if we stop, who are adapting, building new covers, waiting for us to declare victory and move on. She looked at the 3 men. Ghost's mistake was hunting alone. I will not make that mistake, but I also will not stop hunting until the network is gone. Torres nodded. We expected that answer, which is why Webb made you another offer. What offer? Department of Defense Inspector General, Special Investigator. Your job would be finding the 9, building cases, working with us, using Ghost methods but with the support of the system instead of against it. Kane pulled out a badge, held it toward her. It had her name engraved. Riley A. Garrett, Special Investigator, Department of Defense, Office of the Inspector General. Below it, the seal, the eagle, the shield. The symbols of authority Ghost never trusted, but Riley might be able to wield differently. She took the badge, felt the weight of it, felt the responsibility it represented, felt Ghost's presence like a hand on her shoulder. Approving, warning, reminding her that institutions could be used for good if you understood their limitations, if you did not let them define you, if you remembered that the badge was a tool, not an identity. I accept, on one condition. Name it, we finish this together. All of us, not hierarchy, not chain of command, a team, the way Ghost should have built one, the way Sullivan believed we could be. Rourke extended his hand. Agreed. They shook. Then Torres. Then Kane. 4 people standing at a grave in Wyoming making a promise to a dead man and to each other. That the work would continue. That the network would be dismantled. That the 9 remaining operatives would be found. That justice delayed was still justice coming. That Ghost's 25 years would not be in vain. Riley's phone buzzed as they walked back to the vehicles. Unknown number. She almost ignored it. Then curiosity won. She opened the message, read it, felt her blood go cold, showed it to Rourke. 9 remain. 7 are active. 2 are in positions you cannot touch. Ghost's fight is not over. It is yours now. Will you finish it or will you become him? 25 years of hunting shadows alone. Choose carefully. A friend who knew Frank. Rourke read it, looked at her. What will you do? Riley looked back at the grave, at the photograph, at Sullivan's cross, at the evidence of sacrifice and cost in the price of truth. Then she looked at the badge in her hand, at the 3 men beside her, at the choice that was not really a choice because Ghost had prepared her for this, had known she would face it, had trusted she would choose correctly. Ghost hunted alone and died alone. She put the badge in her pocket, put the phone away, started walking toward the vehicles. I am not making that mistake. We finish this together, but not today. Today we remember what we are fighting for. Today we honor the dead. Tomorrow we hunt the living. They drove away from the cemetery. 4 people in 2 vehicles, heading back to Virginia, to the office Webb had prepared, to the files on 9 suspects, to the investigation that would define the next phase of Riley's life. She did not know how long it would take, did not know what it would cost, did not know if she would survive it or if it would consume her the way it consumed Ghost. But she knew one thing with certainty. She was not alone. She had a team, she had support, she had the tools Ghost never allowed himself to have, and she had the wisdom to use them, to balance truth with mercy, justice with peace, vengeance with healing. The lessons Ghost had taught through his journal, through his sacrifice, through the choice he left her, the choice she had made, the choice she would live with for the rest of her life. 3 months later, she was in Arizona, following a lead on suspect number 6, a retired colonel who had been in position to access sandstorm coordinates, who had left the military in 1992 with a pension that did not match his rank, who now lived in Scottsdale and consulted for defense contractors and drove a car that cost more than 10 years of his military salary. The kind of inconsistency Ghost would have investigated, the kind Riley now had authority to pursue. She sat outside his house, watching, waiting, the way Ghost had taught her, patient, methodical, looking for the pattern that would confirm suspicion or eliminate it. Kane was on communications, monitoring the colonel's phone, his email, his movements. Torres was checking financial records, following money. Rourke was coordinating with Webb, making sure when they moved they had support, making sure Riley did not end up like Ghost, alone, exposed, vulnerable. The colonel came out of his house, got in his car, drove to a meeting Riley had not known about. She followed, kept distance, professional surveillance. The car stopped at a park. The colonel got out, walked to a bench, sat, waited. 5 minutes later, another man arrived. Older, familiar. Riley pulled out binoculars, focused, felt her heart stop. The man was wearing civilian clothes but moving with military bearing. She knew that walk, had seen it in photographs, had studied it in Ghost files. It was one of the 9. Suspect number 3, The one Webb said was too well connected to touch without perfect evidence. The one who had friends in Congress, in Pentagon, in places that made prosecution impossible without absolute proof. Riley took photographs, recorded video, documented the meeting, sent it to Kane, waited for analysis. Kane's response came back in 30 seconds. Confirmed. Suspect 3, previously unknown connection to Suspect 6. This is the break we needed. Riley watched the two men talk, watched money change hands, watched them separate, watched Suspect 3 drive away in a car with government plates, watched the colonel return to his house, watched the pattern emerge. The network was still operating, still functioning, still believing they were untouchable, but they were wrong because Ghost had built the foundation. Cross had preserved it, and Riley had the authority and the team to finish it. She called Rourke. We have them. Both of them. Meeting documented, exchange recorded. This is prosecutable. Rourke's voice came back steady. Bring it in. We move tomorrow. Simultaneous arrests. Clean. Professional. By the book. Riley started her car. Headed back to the office. Thought about Ghost. About how he would have done this differently. Would have worked alone. Would have trusted no one. Would have isolated himself until the isolation killed him. She was not doing it that way. She had learned from his mistakes, had built something different, had created the team he should have created, and it was working. The arrests happened at dawn, coordinated across 3 states. FBI, DOD investigators, military police, 2 more suspects in custody, 2 more pieces of the network gone. 7 remained. Then 5. Then 3. The work continued, month after month, year after year. Each arrest bringing them closer. Each piece of evidence making the case stronger. Each victory smaller than Ghost's sacrifice, but adding up to something that honored it. 5 years after Brennan's conviction, Riley returned to Wyoming, to Ghost's grave. The headstone had weathered. The photograph had faded. But the cross was still there, still catching light, still reading, "Truth sets free." She placed a new photograph. The team. Riley, Rourke, Torres, Kane, Cross, standing together outside the DOD Inspector General office. 5 people who had started as strangers and suspects and become something Ghost never believed possible. A team that hunted darkness without becoming it. She spoke to the headstone, knowing Ghost could not hear, knowing it did not matter, needing to say it anyway. We got 6 of the 9. 3 are still out there, still running, still hiding. But we will find them, not in 25 years, not alone, together. The way you should have done it, the way I learned from watching you do it wrong. She paused. Thank you for training me, for trusting me, for leaving me the choice. I made it. I live with it, and I would make it again. The wind blew across the Wyoming grass, carried the smell of sage and distance, carried the sound of nothing and everything. Riley stood, placed her hand on the headstone, felt the granite warm from sun, felt Ghost's legacy solid beneath her palm, felt the weight of the badge in her pocket, the weight of the choice, the weight of the work unfinished, but also felt the strength of the team, the support of the system, the balance Ghost never found, the wisdom that came from learning from his mistakes instead of repeating them. She walked back to her car. Rourke was waiting. They had another lead. Suspect 7, location confirmed, evidence gathering. The work continued. The hunt continued. But Riley was not Ghost, was not alone, was not consumed, was not sacrificing everything for an answer that might never come. She was doing it differently, better, with eyes open, with help accepted, with the understanding that truth mattered, but so did the living, that justice was important, but so was mercy, that some questions had answers and some had only choices, and the wisdom was knowing which was which. 10 years after Ghost died, his granddaughter had finished half his work and started the other half, had caught the betrayer, had honored the fallen, had built the team, and had learned the lesson he spent 25 years teaching. That truth was worth pursuing, that justice was worth fighting for, that sacrifice had meaning, but that none of it mattered if you died alone. That legacy was not what you accomplished. It was what you passed forward. That Ghost's real victory was not catching Brennan. It was preparing Riley to finish what he could not, to do it better, to survive it, to build something that outlasted both of them. She drove away from the cemetery, the badge in her pocket, Sullivan's cross on the seat beside her, Ghost journal in her bag, 3 pieces of the P, 3 reminders of cost, 3 reasons to keep going. The highway stretched ahead. Montana became Wyoming, became South Dakota. The landscape changed, but the work stayed the same. Find the pattern, follow the evidence, trust the team, finish the mission, honor the dead by protecting the living. Somewhere ahead, 3 suspects were hiding. Somewhere behind, Ghost was resting. Somewhere beside her, Rourke was driving. Torres was running analysis. Kane was monitoring communications. Cross was coordinating with Webb. The team was working. The network was shrinking. The truth was emerging. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. Ghost would have wanted perfect. Riley had learned to accept enough. That was growth. That was wisdom. That was the inheritance that mattered more than the tattoo or the journal or the badge. She was Ghost's heir, but she was not Ghost. She was something better, something he had built but could not be. A warrior who knew when to fight and when to wait, an investigator who trusted evidence but also people, a leader who accepted help instead of rejecting it, a woman who carried her grandfather's legacy without being crushed by it, who finished his work without becoming his cautionary tale, who proved that 25 years of sacrifice meant something because it created something that could survive him. The sun set behind the mountains. The road curved ahead into darkness. Riley drove into it without fear, because she had learned from Ghost that darkness was just another environment, just another terrain to master, just another challenge to meet with preparation and patience and the willingness to see what others missed. And she had learned from his mistakes that you did not have to face it alone, that teams made you stronger, that trust was not weakness, that the best way to honor a Ghost was to live differently than they died. The inheritance was complete. The choice was made. The work continued. And Riley Garrett drove into the future carrying the past but not imprisoned by it, ready for whatever came next, ready to finish the hunt, ready to honor Ghost by being better than him, by surviving, by building, by passing forward what he had given her, truth and mercy, justice and peace, vengeance and healing. All of it balanced, all of it earned, all of it his gift to her and her gift to whoever came after. The road stretched on. The night closed in, and somewhere a Ghost was finally resting. His work done, his heir trained, his legacy secured, not in medals or ceremonies or official recognition, but in the young woman who carried his mark, in his mission, in his methods, but rejected his isolation, who proved that the best inheritance was not what you were given, but what you did with it, who showed that 25 years of darkness could create light if the right person carried it forward. Riley drove on, the badge in her pocket, the cross beside her, the journal in her bag. 3 generations of sacrifice, 1 mission, no end in sight, but also no fear, no doubt, no hesitation, just the clear purpose Ghost had given her and the wisdom she had earned herself. Finish what he started, do it better, survive it, build something that lasts, honor the dead, protect the living, keep moving forward. That was the inheritance, that was the mission, that was Ghost's final gift. And Riley accepted it, all of it, with eyes open, with hands ready, with a team beside her and a future ahead that was hers to build. Different from his, better than his, worthy of his sacrifice. That was enough. That was everything. That was what Ghost became when their heirs learned from them instead of repeating them. Legacy, purpose, hope. The road stretched on, and Riley drove into tomorrow carrying yesterday without being buried by it. Ready, trained, unafraid. Ghost's heir, but also her own woman. That was the victory that mattered. That was the inheritance complete. Riley's choice hit me hard when I was writing this. She had Ghost's evidence to expose everything, but chose to protect the families who believed their service meant something. 25 years Ghost hunted alone, and it nearly destroyed him. Riley did it differently, built a team, trusted people, finished the mission without losing herself. For those of you who served, if you'd found proof that a mission you believed in was built on lies, would you expose it or protect the brothers who fought beside you? Drop your thoughts below, and if this one landed, there's more stories coming. Hit subscribe so you don't miss them.